Hi and welcome to the Art of Healthy Living. I am Dr. Ranj Segu, and today we're talking about the gut health and our microbiome. Today we're going to be talking about what the microbiome is and how it not only affects our gut health but our overall health, and how we look after the microbiome so it in turn can look after us. So the important question to start with is, what is the microbiome? Now, the microbiome is the trillions of microbes that live within our gut. And this is a fascinating topic because we are learning so much about the microbiome. Like I said, there are trillions of bacteria and fungi and viruses that live within our gut that are really important for how we live and function. Um, the the amount of these microbes truly outnumbers our own human cells. And what's more interesting is that the amount of genomic material that these microbes have vastly outnumbers our own DNA, which means they actually do a lot more functions for us than we can do ourselves. They carry out a lot of the body's activities that we just aren't able to do ourselves. They are vitally important for us. And so the things that they kind of do are digestion. They're really important for digestion and how we digest our food. They do a lot of the digestive processes that we cannot do ourselves. They modulate hormones and the immune system, and they produce vitamins and neurotransmitters that we can't. So, for example, vitamin K2, serotonin is a neurotransmitter that we often associate with mental health. So we often think that it's produced mostly in the brain, but actually majority of serotonin is produced in the gut. So that's very interesting. What's important about the microbiome? Now, I put this down to two factors. Number one is balance, and secondly is the diversity of the microbiome. What do we mean by this? So, in terms of balance, I'm talking about the balance between the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. And as you can probably guess, the good bacteria are the ones that we need, that are helpful for us, and then the bad bacteria are the ones that actually produce more problems, more long-term health problems. So the balance of these two is really key. Secondly is the diversity. And what I mean by diversity is the range of the different types of good bacteria that we want in the system. So the more diversity is, the more different processes that they can do for us, and the better it is for us. But unfortunately, we're living in a society where generally we have low diversity and an imbalance in mostly bad bacteria in our microbiome. That's actually not very helpful for our short-term and long-term health. There's lots of different factors for this. So we can't just look at the diet as the reason for this. So we need to look at all the different factors that lead to us having a poor microbiome. So stress is a big factor. So we know that we're living in a state where we're sort of constantly stressed, where there's high sort of stress levels all the time, and this is leading to more inflammation in the system. That's having an impact on our gut microbiome, not only directly but indirectly, because when we're more stressed, we tend to eat the wrong foods, or we snack, or we more sort of highly processed foods, and this again leads to a bad microbiome. We're also living in a very sedentary time where we're all very sedentary and not getting much exercise. Again, that is not good for our metabolism and our stress levels and things as well. We need to look at environmental factors. So the chemicals that we're using and putting into our bodies, the fact that we're not getting out into nature very much, that we're not relaxing as much as we should, we're getting poor sleep, so we're not getting enough of the restorative processes And another important factor, and a very big factor when we talk about environmental, is things like medications. So we know antibiotics are really important for us when we are poorly and have an infection, but the inappropriate use of antibiotics is really bad. Not only does it get rid of the bacterial strains that we're trying to remove from the system, it wipes out masses of bacteria, causing an imbalance again with bad bacteria, and a huge disruption to the diversity of the microbiome as well. So why is all of this important? What happens when there's a shift towards having bad bacteria predominant in the microbiome and the diversity being very poor? Well, this is all to do with dysbiosis. And what dysbiosis means is it's just that there's an imbalance between the good bacteria and the bad bacteria, where the bad bacteria are proliferating and producing lots of inflammation, lots of endotoxins, lots of inflammatory molecules in the gut, which leads to a leaky gut. And you may have heard of this term before. What is a leaky gut? Now, the lining of the gut is very thin. It's only one cell thick, and it's joined together by tight junctions. Now, these toxins will start to break down these tight junctions, and which causes a leaky gut. So the gut becomes open and leaky to all of these toxins and chemicals being able to get into the rest of the system. And once these toxins get into the rest of the system, they can go throughout the body, cause inflammation, and start to produce symptoms in other parts of the body. One of the other key important elements here is that the immune system actually sits just outside of the gut lining. So as soon as these toxins start to get out into the system, the immune system starts to recognize that these are foreign invaders, if you like, and start to attack these toxins and chemicals, and start to produce antibodies and an immune reaction. And this is one of the processes which starts to develop into autoimmune conditions. So that's really important. In the short term, like we mentioned, these chemicals going to different parts of the body will start to cause symptoms that we will start to recognize. And these often start as low-level symptoms. So, for example, if they start to produce inflammation in the brain, we might experience things like brain fog, poor concentration, headaches, migraines. Generally, you can start to feel fatigue and muscle aches, joint pains in the skin. You might start to get skin rashes that we're not used to getting. So things like eczema and acne. And within the gut itself, it will start to cause things like indigestion, heartburn, bloating, excessive gas and wind. So these are all short-term or kind of early symptoms that we might start to develop, that if we recognize them, these are a sign of dysbiosis and leaky gut. And it's important to recognize these early, because if we can recognize that these are the early signs of dysbiosis and we can start to correct them, then we can hopefully prevent the long-term effects. In the long term, if we are getting sort of chronic inflammation, and we think about chronic inflammation in the liver, we talk about fatty liver and chronic liver disease. In the blood vessels, we're talking about atherosclerosis, high blood pressure, heart disease. So we can see how in the long term it will start to develop into more long-term and more serious chronic health problems. We also mentioned earlier how it can develop into autoimmune conditions, and also chronic inflammation is implicated in several cancers as well. So it's really important that we recognise the dysbiosis early. And then the big question is, can we prevent or restore the microbiome to prevent these long-term conditions from occurring? Absolutely, yes, that's the key focus. That's what we really need to be doing. And the way to do it is to improve the diversity of the good bacteria, and shift the balance of bacteria back towards the good bacteria as well. And just as we said, there's several elements implicated in sort of disruption of the microbiome. There, we have to address all of those factors in improving the microbiome as well. So we mentioned things like trying to improve and manage stress, increasing exercise levels, looking at our environment so that we're mindful of the sort of the chemicals and things that we're putting into our bodies or onto our bodies, getting good sleep, getting out in nature, being able to relax, and again, in terms of things like antibiotic and other medication uses, being really mindful about when they're used and using them appropriately in the right situations. Obviously, the diet is really important in improving the microbiome. And what we're trying to achieve with by improving our diet is to reduce the levels of inflammation in the gut, supporting the growth of the right bacterias, reducing the bad bacterias, and improving the diversity of the good bacteria that we need as well to support a healthy gut and a healthy microbiome. How do we do this? Essentially, it's reducing the highly processed foods that are so predominant in our diet nowadays, that are high in sugar, high in fats, and these are very inflammatory. Often when patients do come and they're really significantly troubled by these symptoms, an elimination diet can be really useful. And what I mean by an elimination diet is, for a month, if you're able to, because it can be quite hard, is cutting out foods that we know are highly inflammatory, so things like gluten and dairy and meat and the highly processed foods and refined sugars and things, which I know can be difficult because it makes up a lot of our diet. But by doing that strictly for a month, we can help to really quickly reverse symptoms, and then we can slowly start to add things back in, and we can really work out which was the components that are causing the inflammation and the symptoms for us. In the long term, to achieve a good microbiome and to reduce inflammation levels and to really improve the diversity of the good bacteria in the microbiome, it's largely based on a whole food, mostly plant-based diet, fruit and vegetables and beans and grains, pulses, and the variety of these foods is really important. Okay, I know for a lot of people it might be quite difficult because we're so used to eating processed foods and having meat in the diet as well. But it's not to say that you can't have meat or processed foods or having treats and snacks and things, but it's being more aware and mindful about what we're eating, and thinking about kind of the overall sort of package of what we're eating. So sometimes it can be shifting to eating more vegetables, more fruits, and having a smaller portion of meat and fish, and having snacks every now and again, so that you're, it's still easy enough for you to do and manage, and we're not having those cravings for the treats and things that we're so used to having. But the more you can then evolve that to a like I said, the whole food plant-based diet, kind of the better it is for us. And the reason for that is because meat itself actually doesn't have any fiber. Fiber is really important for the gut microbiome. When we talk about fiber, we talk about soluble and insoluble fibers. So insoluble fibers are the fibers that we don't digest and the bacteria don't digest, but it's the fiber that keeps the bowel moving. It is the fiber that kind of absorbs the toxins and helps to eliminate the toxins. So it's really important that we've got good fiber in the diet. Then there's the soluble fiber, which is the fiber that feeds the bacteria. That's the key element to help the good bacteria grow and thrive and become diverse. And this is what we call prebiotics. Now, prebiotics are, as we said, sort of insoluble fibers that come from different coloured fruit and vegetables, and it's the colours that kind of help improve the diversity. So if you have lots of colours, we often talk about eating the rainbow. And what this means is that the different chemicals, the different pigments, are the different polyphenols and phytochemicals that the different bacteria need for them to grow and produce all the antioxidants and the short chain fatty acids that our bodies need. So having a whole range of different foods, like I said, eating the rainbow, so that on your plate you've got lots of different coloured fruits and vegetables that are going to support a diverse microbiome. And also in terms of having lots of fibre and good fats and things, so eating a lot of beans and grains and pulses is also really important. Probiotics are also really helpful. So probiotics are live strains of bacteria, and these often we can buy these in supermarkets, in drinks, but they do occur naturally in fermented foods, such as things like sauerkraut and kimchi, and live yogurts and kefir and things like that. So probiotics can be really helpful to kind of restore the microbiome as well. So overall, as we said, reducing highly processed, high sugar, high fat foods, and moving towards a more whole food, plant-based diet with lots of fruits and vegetables and grains and pulses that have more antioxidants in them, that support the growth of the good bacteria and the diversity of the good bacteria, is really important. Another thing to think about, and things that people ask is, so if we're eating lots of fruits and things, isn't that eating a lot of sugar in itself? And again, this is where I often say it's important to think about the whole package of the food. So if we compare eating an apple to eating a sweet is just eating sort of refined sugar on its own. That's just going to cause a huge surge in your body's sugar levels. Whereas if you eat an apple, we're looking at the whole package. Yes, it contains sugars, but these are long chain sugars that take longer to digest, and which means that the sugar levels in your body are more sustained and increase more slowly. It's also packaged with insoluble and soluble fibers. So the insoluble fiber is helping again to release the sugar more slowly. So it's taking longer to digest and releases the sugar more slowly. The insoluble fiber is also helping our bowel movements and digestion and elimination of kind of waste products. The insoluble fibers, as prebiotics, the polyphenols, the phytochemicals, are feeding the right bacteria so that they're producing the right antioxidants for us, short chain fatty acids, giving us the right proteins and fats and things that we need for kind of a healthy gut and a healthy microbiome. So I hope you really enjoyed this journey through looking at the microbiome. And I think it really shows that if we look after our gut and the microbes in it, then they will look after us. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Thank you very much, and I'll see you again.